Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing an exclusive video on my German tanks. While I do have other nations' tanks in my World of Tanks garage, I do focus perhaps 90% on German tanks, as they are the tanks that have always interested me, both in styling and technology and history. I do have quite a few German tanks, so this video may be a little bit longer than what I normally do, but I do plan on doing a video on each of my nationalities. Though I don't have many other tanks, they will be shorter videos, but German tanks are my passion. So yeah, please bear with me as I maybe go on a little bit and waffle on about a few of these tanks. A few of the tanks over the time I have been playing, I have sold, of course, to make room for other tanks. So there are other German tanks that I really love and highly recommend, but I don't have them currently in my garage. There's probably even a few in my garage that I could quite comfortably sell off and go back and get some other tanks that I haven't tried, perhaps. But I'm pretty happy with the lineup that I have, and it includes a few premium tanks from World of Tanks Ops. So I've got those tanks for free, which has been great. So I've managed to train up crew on most of my German tanks now. Most of them, as we go through them, will have a few different crew skills on them. You see I do have a bit of a theme with my crew skills. I do tend to have like brothers in arms, for example, and things to improve the spotting ranges, etc. But that's something that I'll go into perhaps more detail another time. This video will primarily just be a quick run through of the tanks that I do have in the garage, and perhaps something that I like about each one. So of course the first tank on the lineup will be my Leichtraktor. It's the first German tank you'll come across as you come into the German line that branches off, allowing you to go into all the other tech trees. I really love it, and I've always kept it. I've got a bit of a soft spot for it. I think it looks great. Handles pretty well for a tier 1. It is slightly outmatched by quite a few of the other tanks, but it sort of makes up for that in general good handling. A decent gun, and I've got a few crew skills on it, which definitely helps. I am running the 2cm gun on it, which does do some quite decent damage, especially if you pop a little bit of premium ammo on there if you think you're not going to be able to penetrate. Yeah, quite an enjoyable tank to use. And as I said, if you are going to go into German tanks, you're going to go through this one anyway. And it's definitely not a hard grind. That takes you into the tier 2 tanks, and I love the Panzer II. Panzer II is one of the most fun tanks that I hop into and play every now and then. It's just very manoeuvrable, very fast. The 2cm flak gun on it is fantastic. Sometimes if you're playing up to tier 3, the gun may struggle a little bit. You might have to use some premium ammo. But especially at tier 2, this tank really does dominate and do some good damage. Great little tank. One of the most fun tanks I think I've played in the German line. And looks great too. Looks really cool with the camo. And I think you can do a lot worse than get this tank into your garage. This is one of the tanks I received from completing one of the World of Tanks op challenges, which is the 38H. Actually, at first I didn't think a lot of this tank, but now when I do play it, I quite enjoy it. It has quite a fair amount of armour for tier 2, especially on the front. And you can sit there and soak up quite a few incoming rounds from enemy tanks. Actually, I just recently uploaded a video where you'll see that in action. Actually sitting there absorbing quite a few rounds from enemy tanks while using its sort of reasonably quick fire gun to yeah, tear away at their hit points. Reasonably slow tank. Yeah, pretty fun at tier 2, and can play tier 3. Looks a bit funky, but yeah, for a free tank, I definitely won't argue with that. and has trained up a few of my crew. And of course, yeah, primarily, sorry, that's what you'll be using your premium tanks for. They also earn a good amount of silver and XP. Now to a good oldie of mine at tier 3, which is the Panzer 3E. I kept this for sentimental reasons, I guess. I used to play this tank quite a bit. It's quite a good all-rounder, quite a good gun. Good at tier 3, decent at tier 4. Tier 5 struggles a bit, but reasonably heavy for a light tank. Good gun on it, and quite a bit of fun to play at tier 3. I think it has that classic German look to it as well, which is something I really love. And you'll probably notice me a few times in this video mention how much I love the look of a tank. I quite like the individual look of the German tanks. I think it's really how tanks should look. But of course there'll be people out there that'll argue. Now a tier 3 premium tank that I received in a World of Tanks op, which is the T15. At first didn't think much of this tank, but pretty soon came to love its speed and manoeuvrability. Pretty great crew trainer. I'm not sure why, but tends to train up crew a little bit quicker than my other premium tanks. Very fun to play. You can literally do circles around enemy tanks, hitting them from behind and hitting their tracks and ammo racks if you can pen them. Where that is probably its low point is its gun, but you can chuck some premium rounds on there and do some damage. Great for getting behind enemy lines and hitting enemy artillery or tank destroyers, or yeah, just doing some fun fast scouting. Looks really cool too. Yeah, great fun little tank. If it was cheap enough, I would actually recommend this as a tank to buy to actually train up some of your crew. Yeah, quite an enjoyable little tank. Yeah, my tier 5 Lux is another cool little tank with a fun gun on it. I'm currently using the 3cm Mark 103. There's a large amount of guns to choose from on this tank. Again, it's a fun little light scout, but it does pack a little bit of a punch, and it's just fun to use. I am training a crew in that, which I believe might be in my S35 tank at the moment. But yeah, the Lux is a pretty fun little tank, and very similar to the next tank in line, which is the tier 5 Leopard. They're both pretty similar tanks, obviously different tiers. Similar sort of guns, a lot of gun choice. They're both fast and manoeuvrable. I do enjoy the Leopard's gun. It is very, very slow reloading. But it is a great deal of fun when you can come up on someone and blow them away in a massive barrage of fire. The next two tanks are tanks I've just got recently. I had decided to stop the light tank tech tree at the Leopard, as I wasn't too excited to go any further, but recently I've been enjoying light tanks, so I had a couple of garage spots and thought I would add, continue down the line and add the VK2801 to that. This tank I'm actually quite enjoying. It's got quite a good amount of armour and a bit of bounce capability. A decent gun as well, and seems like a pretty good all-round tank. I haven't used it a lot as yet. Originally I was just buying it to get to the next tank in line, but I decided to keep it as I did start to enjoy using it. And this is my most recent acquisition, which is I just call it the SPPZ-1C. I guess that's the Spark Panzer 1C. Quite a unique tank. At the moment, it does come with a 90mm gun, which is great, but as you can see, it does play up to tier 9. I was only playing in this tank perhaps an hour ago, and was in a tier 9 game, and it really struggled to get much pen, but I did get a couple of good penetrations and a kill, and I find it really rewarding, this tank. It's a lot of fun to use. I would say difficult to use, yes, but very rewarding, I think, when you have a good game and really help your team set up with some spots and harassing the enemy. And I think the tank's main reason why I wanted to get it was it just looks so tough. I love the gun on it. It looks awesome. But yeah, still early days for me with this tank, but yeah, at the moment I'm enjoying getting in the light tanks. I think I'm going to try using this one a little bit more. The next tank is another one that I won in a World of Tanks Challenge Ops, which is the S35. This tank's actually pretty good as a tank, a crew trainer. The gun on it is quite fast firing. It is a very slow tank, quite a laborious sort of move around the field, but yeah, I tend to enjoy it when I do use it. It does look a little bit odd, but yeah, quite an enjoyable tank to use. And of course, being a premium tank, I use it to train up some of my crews. It looks pretty good in the winter camo, flat white winter camo. It does play up to tier 5 where it struggles a little bit, but at tier 3 it's fantastic. Tier 4 it's okay, but tier 5 it still is usable. Another one of the tanks that I kept from my grind up through the tech tree was this one, which is the Panzer IIIJ. I used to use this tank quite a lot, just for a bit of fun. It has a really cool gun on it. It's quite fast and manoeuvrable for a medium tank. And yeah, at tier 4, it's a very nice tank and quite a match for a lot of other tanks that you'll find. I think it looks great, has that classic sort of German look. And yeah, quite easy to use and quite a fun tank. I as yet may train up the crew in a little bit more and get it to be a little bit more deadly, but yeah, it's quite a good tank. Now the Panzer III-4 was one I just wanted to try out at the time, and was more than likely going to sell it, but quite enjoyed it after I purchased it. It's a pretty good all-round tank. I wouldn't say it's great at any one particular thing. I do enjoy tier 5 probably the most, as it's got such a great mix of tanks and a great balance of tanks. And this tank's fairly enjoyable to use, fairly deadly too, but there is a slightly better version, and that's the next tank that I've got here. As I have said earlier, this is the only tank that I actually purchased in the game. It was on sale at the time, I believe for a bit over 2,000 gold. It's just such a great tank. I highly recommend this tank to anyone looking to get into German tanks. If you want something to train your crews up, this tank is fantastic. It does play tier 5, tier 6 and tier 7. Even at tier 7 it can do some damage, but at tier 5 it is a beast. Tier 6 it's still very good, but when you're in a tier 5 game, there's not a lot you have to worry about. It's a great rammer as well. I love ramming other tanks in this tank. And it's amazing the amount of people that perhaps don't understand how good a rammer it is and come to try and ram you, or when they see you coming they try and come and do a head-on with you, and they come off second best every time, because it is a fantastic rammer. Its gun's good, fast firing, reasonably accurate. It's got good armour, can bounce as well quite often. Yeah, occasionally when I put my Panzer IV crew, which is the next tank that I'm going to show you, in it that has many crew skills, it becomes very deadly indeed. and I think it just looks fantastic as well. I think it's I love that classic sort of German look, with the nice front sort of slope there and the turret on top, and then the gun. I don't know, it just looks great to me, and just looks classic. Now probably to my most used and favourite tank these days, and I mean, look at that, and that's the Panzer IV-H. Actually held off buying this tank for a long time. I always found that I was destroying Panzer IVs a lot, and I'd always laugh when I saw a Panzer IV on the battlefield, and I'd always target them and more often than not destroy them. And I have a laugh and think, why would anyone bother with this tank? Anyway, after a long time, I think at the time I was a little bit bored and thought, why not add a Panzer IV into the garage? It's a classic German tank. And I must say, at first I did have a bit of a chuckle and think, yeah, why? Why do people persist with this tank? It starts off with the 7.5 centimeter gun. The gun was okay. I guess it's a reasonably typical medium tank in that it's sort of good at everything and not great at any one thing. But I thought I'd struggle through it. I think I got to the next upgrade and found it to be a little bit more manoeuvrable, a little bit better. Still had the same gun though, but thought I'd persist at it. And then continued down the line until I found what I found to be the perfect match for it, which was the 10.5 centimeter L28. And that's the gun I've used ever since. I just find it to be such an amazing all-round tank. There's not really anything it can't do. I've destroyed every kind of tank in the game with this tank. Everything from long-range sniper shots to point-blank destruction shots. You don't need any premium ammo with it at all. This gun is, yeah, more than a match for most tanks out there, especially at its tier 5 tier. As you can see here, the usual load I carry is some premium rounds just in case, but 99% of the time I just use these high explosive rounds, which, okay, they only pen 40 to 66, but the damage potential is fantastic at 308 to 513. The amount of times I've one-shotted tanks is just not funny. It's just an amazing gun. Maybe not 100% accurate, which is fair enough, being the dirt gun. But it is so enjoyable to use. The tank itself is still manoeuvrable, has a decent amount of armour, enough that you can take a hit and retreat into a bit of cover. Has a reasonable amount of spotting, concealment, but the firepower is what I love about it. Yeah, I've really fallen in love with this tank, and if I was going to recommend perhaps 3 tanks, this would be one of them. The Panzer V-4 would be another, and just because it's always been an old favourite of mine, both on PC and console, the Stuk 3 would probably be the other one. Yeah, just I can't stop raving on about this tank, so we better move on. But I've got a lot of the crew is trained up with quite a few skills there. I'm on my 8th skill now. Some of those were trained up in the Panzer V-4, and then the rest all trained up in the tank itself. Very easy tank to use, just a joy to use. Really great tank. The next couple of tanks are the 2 Panthers I have, the Panther 1 and Panther 2. They're great fun tanks as well. I probably prefer the Panther 1 over the Panther 2, probably because of the tiers that it plays. You find the Panther 2 plays up to tier 10, which really doesn't do it any favours. Very similar tanks, good amount of bounce on them, nice big turrets, classic German tanks. They are fun. I've had a lot more fun in the Panther 1. And again, I'm training up the Panther 2 crew at the moment, just to give it that little bit of extra bite. Now, I wouldn't be a German tank user without getting the Tiger. And to unlock the Tiger, you've of course got to go through these two heavy tanks, which are two of my favourite tanks in my garage. Quite often, if I'm doing an op or grinding for silver or XP, I jump in one of these two heavy tanks, or probably both. And they're great trainers for what will eventually be the Tiger 1, which is a bit of a combination of both of them. But once you've used both of these tanks, the Tiger 1 feels like a fairly natural fit. The 3001H is great. The number one thing I've really, besides the amount of options of different guns, I really love this last gun on the tree. I find it hard to use any of the others. It's such a good gun. Really fast firing, heavy hitting, penetrating. And the tank itself has a good amount of armor, maneuverability, and it's just pretty fun to use. 3601H is a bit heavier again, and the great thing about it is you get the 88mm. It has a really great amount of armor. It's a lot slower than the 3001, but by the time you get to this one and you play this one for a while, upgrade it, you'll really be ready for the Tiger 1. Out of these two, I probably prefer the 3601H, especially once you get into a nice set position somewhere and use that 88 to decimate the enemy. But of course, the Tiger 1 was always something I was grinding towards, and it is a great tank. It has a few failings, of course, but if you're a German tank player, you're probably going to have one of these in your garage. Looks amazing. Probably arguably the most famous German tank in the world. Just beautiful, beautiful looking tank. I mean, when I think of German tanks, this is what I think of. Really great to use. The gun on is just fantastic. It's great at sniping, but it can brawl up close as well. Got a decent amount of hit points and maneuverability. When you first get it, before it is upgraded, it can be a little bit of a struggle, but if you persevere with it, you'll really enjoy it. This is actually one of the few tanks where every crew skill in it has been done in this tank. I used to play this tank quite a bit, so I'm on my 4th skill now, but perhaps in the future I might train up the crew, get it a bit more along the lines of my Panzer IV, and have a few more skills there to sharpen it up. A tank that I more recently went back to, after not really being interested in getting it, was the Tiger P. And I'm glad I went back and got it, because it is a great tank. In fact, I'd say arguably it's better than the Tiger 1. They're very similar tanks, but it does have a little bit more armor at the front, which does allow you to absorb some of that those incoming rounds. Both of these tanks play up to tier 9. Tier 9, they do tend to struggle a little bit. In fact, you're playing more like a medium tank. But at their own tiers, they're fantastic. I'd almost lean towards the Tiger P if I was going to use one at the moment. A little bit different design, but yeah, they're both very similar tanks. I think the Tiger 1 probably looks a bit more mean, but don't underestimate the Tiger P. It is a great tank. Now this was a tank I got in an op for free not too long ago. I am currently training a crew up in it. I haven't used it a great deal. I have enjoyed playing it though when I have played it. Does play up to tier 9. Doesn't play too dissimilar to the Tigers, but has quite a different feel to it. Does seem to be a good crew trainer, though I do prefer really to train my crews in my tier 5 Panzers, or lower ones, as this tank is a little bit slower moving, can be a bit slower to train up those crews, but yeah, pretty cool tank. Looks pretty cool. Has that sort of Panther style hull, so you can bounce a few shots, and yeah, enjoyable tank to use. I don't know if I would actually purchase this tank, but getting it for free was great, and why not? I believe that is actually training up my Tiger 2 crew, which is this tank here. Of course, the Tiger 2, another very famous German tank. I have used this Tiger 2 quite a bit. I haven't used it for a long time now, as I have preferred to play the lower tiers and gone through my sort of light tanks and artillery phases recently. Great looking tank, massive and just a beast of a thing. Hits quite hard, and yeah, it's quite enjoyable. I do find it gets a bit outmatched as a few of the sorry, German tanks do with these tiers and higher, but it is an enjoyable tank to use. I did keep going with that line and get to the E75, which is the last of the heavies that I went to. This tank is massive, heavy, slow firing. Does pack a punch and has quite a bit of armor though. Looks tough and looks not too dissimilar from the Tiger 2. I quite enjoy the look of the going from the Tiger 1 to Tiger 2 to the E75. They look reasonably similar, except of course the Tiger 1, the front, doesn't have the sloping armor. Yeah, an enjoyable tank to use. Don't tend to play the higher tiers too much, but did enjoy this tank when I was playing it. But that was quite some time ago. Now onto my tank destroyers. Now the Stug 3G was a favourite of mine from PC. Quite a fun little tank to use. Little bit challenging, of course, as it has no turret, but has the 105 that I love. And it's just such a cool little tank. It's just so much fun to burn around the battlefield, get into a nice position behind a bush or some rocks or something, and just yeah, launch those big shells at people. And it's definitely one of my favourite tanks. Loved it in PC and had to get it, of course, when I started playing console. A tank I'd really recommend. I know it doesn't have a turret, but very enjoyable tank to use, and a classic German tank. One of the tanks I think of when I think of German tanks. The next couple are sort of the, I guess you could call them the sort of toaster style, which are the Nashorn and the 4C, which are both, yeah, massively heavy on the firepower and very light on the armor. They can be fun when you find yourself in a good enough position. You can hammer the enemy, absolutely hammer the enemy, but you do not want to get caught in any kind of fire, especially artillery. Light tanks will rip you to pieces. Basically everything will just breathe on you and destroy you, but very satisfying when you start smashing those enemy tanks at long range with your accurate and heavy fire. Couple of really fun tanks. Yeah, the Yax Panther. Again, along similar lines of the Stug 3. Sort of no turret, low to the ground, heavy hitting. Good fun. I just really collected it. At the time I was really getting into tank destroyers and thought, why not? But that was as far as I got in the tank destroyer tree. Next up on my group of artillery here. The pick of the bunch for me really is the Hummel. That would probably be my one go-to piece of artillery out of the four. More recent times, I picked myself up this 4B as I was playing a battle one time and laughingly came up to one of these in my light tank thinking that I was going to run circles around it, not realising that how far its turret traverse is. And it turned to face me and blew me away with one shot, and I thought, I want to add that to my garage, so I did. Yeah, quite an enjoyable little piece of artillery to use. Actually, all the German artillery pieces were pretty fun, but that one was pretty fun. The Griau was something I used for quite some time and really enjoyed it, and didn't plan to go any further in artillery, as I did enjoy it so much. It's very accurate. But then one day, I think I had a fair bit of XP sitting there and was enjoying artillery and thought I'd move up the line. And the Hummel was just, so good. When I got to it, I just totally fell in love with it. Not quite as accurate as the Griau and not quite as hard hitting as the Panther, which is the next one in line, but sort of sits in between the two, and I think it's just that perfect balance of accuracy, good enough firing angle that you can sort of not lose too much accuracy when you're turning or following enemy tanks. Fairly accurate, fast loading, hard hitting, and yeah, just a great piece of artillery. I really enjoy using this. In fact, I might use that a little bit tonight. As I did earn a lot of XP with that, I did keep on moving and went to the Panther as well. Which, as I said, it's more hard hitting, but not as accurate, and not as much firing arc. But yeah, a lot of fun, and it is quite enjoyable going up against Tier 9, well, Tier 7, Tier 8 and Tier 9 tanks, and really pounding them with this thing's main gun. You really feel godlike when you're at the other end of the map, completely out of range of their fire and bombing massive shells on them. So that was the last tank in my German line. I hope you've enjoyed just the quick run through. If you have a look at my the rest of my YouTube content, you'll find a lot of World of Tanks videos. Probably most of my German tanks I have at least one video on. I'm currently working on a video for this Panzer IV as well, in the My Tank series. You'll find that folder in my YouTube channel. I also have a folder just of World of Tanks videos, where I sort of just replay good battles that I've had, and a couple of just general garage videos. But I plan to next up do a video on my American tanks, then one on my Russian tanks, and then one on my British tanks. All of those nations I only have a very small number of tanks, so they're going to be quite shorter videos than this, and I'm not quite as obsessive with them as I am with my German tanks. But I did want to mix it up a bit, so I have your sort of classic, I guess you could call it, tanks for those nations that I think probably everyone should have. And if you're a player of one of those nations, I'm sure you probably have them too. Things from the M4 to the KV1 and the Matilda. But yeah, I am primarily a German tank player. I love German tanks. I love the look of them, the styling, the technology, the history, and I like having a German crew in there too, screaming German at me while I'm fighting on the battlefield. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If there is a video specifically that you want to ask for a bit more detail, please leave a comment below. or perhaps check out my channel and see if I already have a video of that tank. But I'm always happy to answer any more questions, or do a specific video on a tank if people are more interested in seeing it. But again, I'd have to say that yeah, probably this Panzer IV-H is, funnily enough, has become my favourite tank, even though at the beginning I would have laughed at you if you had said that. But it's such a great, fun, all-round tank. It's really enjoyable, and I highly recommend this tank to anybody out there. So thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again.